working for you. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Lesroy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for you is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for you.
Good afternoon and welcome to another Working for You program. We thank God for the gift of life to be able to have us here today. My name is Lesroy Williams, and thank you very much for tuning in to today's program, wherever you are in the world. Of course, you know, every week your company is very much appreciated as we share with you what the government is doing, the government's plans, its activities, its policies, and so on. The importance of keeping you informed. Public information is key so that people can know what the government is actually doing to benefit you. Today we are going to be having a discussion on International Women's Day. Of course, you know, every year International Women's Day comes around. Just as in some other cases, you have other celebrations of various things and groups and so on within the society. International Women's Day, every year, we might ask, why every year? Because of its significance, of course, and because how important women are to societies and their development. And so it is celebrated every year on March 8th. So the day actually, International Women's Day, is on Sunday, March 8th. And of course, I have the faithful of the Department of Gender Affairs here. They're the faithful, I call them, because they always show up and they're always ready to report in terms of what the Department of Gender Affairs is doing for the advancement of gender development in the Federation. And I have the veteran, Mrs. Celia Christopher, who has been here many times, who is the director in the Department of Gender Affairs, and Mrs. Chanel Charles, who has also been here on a number of occasions, who is a senior gender officer in the Department of Gender Affairs. Welcome to both of you.
Good to be here.
Right. Of course, you know, International Women's Day is a global day, and it celebrates the social and the economic and the cultural and political achievements of women. But it doesn't stay there. It makes a call to action for accelerating gender equality. The first International Women's Day occurred in 1911, supported by over 1 million people. But today, International Women's Day belongs to all groups, collectively everywhere. And International Women's Day is not a country, it's not a group or organization specific. The day is not country, group, or organization specific. So here we are again, talking about women. Some might ask, why are we always talking about women? Isn't it a subject that is, you know, where we over talk and over discuss? but is a subject that is important indeed. So, International Women's Day. What's the significance? Every year we come and we speak about the significance of it. What is the significance of this day?
International Women's Day is a day set aside globally to celebrate the contribution of women to their families, to the country, and to the communities. And it is significant because, women empower the nation. And so we have to give them their pride of place on this particular and throughout every day.
Yes. Chanel, what is the significance of this day for you? You're a woman, you're a mother, you're a wife, you're a sister. What is the significance of this day for you?
Well, just like all of us do have a special day. We have birthdays, we have Mother's Day, and I believe that, well, for me, I believe that I should have a day specially set aside for me, where I'm being recognized for all the work I have been doing, right, throughout the years. Not only personal achievements, but, as a parent, you wash, you clean, you cook, you do everything that you can do. You raise children. Like I've heard the other day, they're saying now that women are having a third shift. Mm-hmm. They go to work, the children, and then sometimes they have community work on the outside, so women are having a third shift now. So by means, if I'm having, these 3 shifts, I believe I deserve a special day.
Right. In some places, this day probably doesn't resonate much for women. Because in some places, women have been put down. In some places, women's achievements are not really hailed. In some places, very male-dominated, and women are not really approved of, so to speak, in, as they should be in public places. In some places, they have to walk around and they have to hide their face. In some places, just recently, they're able to get a driver's license. In some places, they cannot drive in the front seat of the car. They have to go to the back. In some places, of course, it's almost as there's a culture of rape. We speak about places we hear in some places in Asia, like India. And sometimes we hear about it here too, where women are being raped. And somehow you get the impression that sometimes, there's a lot of silence about it. And so sometimes people believe that it's acceptable, and that women should keep their place, and that, they should be only seen for their bodies and as sexual objects and so on. So all of this day is one of importance. It is also a sad day for some people who have experienced that being a woman, has really disadvantaged them in society. And perhaps this is one of the reasons why this day emerged, to highlight some of these gender injustices, gender inequalities, and so on. So, Mrs. Christopher, I see you're all...
And it is because of these injustices and cultural norms and all of that. Why the United Nations spearhead the global, this global action around the world to help to bring some equality and some solutions to some of these problems?
Mm-hmm. I do not believe that we will probably achieve perfect equality.
No, you won't.
In heaven.
You won't.
But at the very same time, we can work to make the world more equal in terms of the balance. Equity and so on. But of course, when there will always be some inequality. I remember when I was in high school, I think it's third form, and for literature we did Animal Farm. You know George Orwell? George Orwell, yeah, Animal Farm. And you had the pigs and you have all the animals on the farm and so on. And the first commandment, because of course they overthrew the farmer, who they say was being very unjust and wasn't fair and so on to them and so on, and they overthrew the farmer. And so they decided that they were going to now be the leaders. They were going to be the government, so to speak, and they were going to set things right. And one of the things that they first said is that, all of us were equal. All animals are equal. That was the first commandment. They came up with the commandment, all animals are equal. And at the end of the day, there was another commandment they came up with. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others.
Well, it's because of that, all of that interaction and all of that confusion and the Animal Farm, why they eventually see the inequalities begin to surface.
The inequalities began to surface.
They realize that all animals are not equal.
All animals are not equal. And so we have a lot of work to do in terms of the gender equality. And of course, equality and equity are not the same things. And I hope that you would shed some light on the difference between both today. But for this year, International Women's Day, what is the theme?
The theme is I Am Generation Equality, Realizing Women's Rights.
Right. No, that is the local theme.
No, that's the UN theme.
That's the UN theme?
Yes.
But I also have an equal world is an enabled world. They also have, is that...
a number of themes.
Yeah, because I've seen that too, that an equal world is an enabled world, and each for equal. The hashtag?
Yeah.
Each for equal. Generation equality. Realizing women's rights.
I am, so meaning that we are the change.
So it has been personalized.
Yes.
I am.
Yes.
So you can't look to something or someone.
Mm-hmm.
You are.
Right. So therefore it simply means then that it becomes personal.
Yes, they personalize it.
They personalize it. So therefore now I must take responsibility
Right.
for making changes.
And you must also take action to bring about the changes you want to see.
So it is a sort of, even though it's a sort of a personalizing an individual thing, it's a sort still of a collective individualism.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's how my actions and my choices
It's going to help to bring about the changes.
can help to bring about the changes. Right. So I am generation equality, realizing women's rights. Now, the Gender Affairs Department is not just about empowering women, but it's about empowering all genders, basically. But our focus today is on women. So, what do you have planned for International Women's Day? How do you intend to celebrate International Women's Day?
We have a set of...
Because Miss Charles is responsible for women's empowerment, she is going to tell you exactly what is going to happen for International Women's Day.
So we have a set of activities that is going to take place, and the first one is we're here today.
Right.
We're here today. So on the 6th, which is this Friday, we would have our ceremony. That's our International Women's Day ceremony. It sounds small, but it's a big event where we award. This year we awarded 9 women in different areas for the achievements and the work they have done in their prospective communities. We would normally do our church service, but this year International Women's Day actually falls on the 8th, which is Sunday. So Sunday we'll go to church, and we're asking our organizations who have been our partners over the years to join us. we will also have our minister there. So I'm thinking the Antioch Baptist Church, will be filled that day. And then from the Monday to the Friday, we will do a workplace visit at the industrial estate, where we will go to see the women there. With us, we will have the Senator Akila Byron with us, and we will have the CMO, Dr. Laws, along with some nurses with us. We think that is important, that is not only, Women's Month, but health is also, one of our main priorities as well. So they're coming along with us. They're going to talk about the COVID-19, how we can stay safe. We can keep it on the back burner, but bring it forward with us. So we're looking forward to be at the industrial estate that week. So it's the whole week, morning and afternoon. And we are going to have a girls empowerment workshop. The date is not actually set as yet, but it's going to be in this month. And we're also going to have a competition, a poetry competition. We would have the schools, write a poem, but this would be a girl. Write a poem, it's among the 6 high schools, and we will see, which poem talks about women and their empowerment and achievements, which one is best that we can use, we can keep it, we could use it as an ad, we can do anything we want with it. So I think that's about it with the activities that we would have for the month of March.
Of course, there are other organizations who will have their activity to celebrate International Day. So there's a number of activities going on, but the Department of Gender, that would be our activities that we will be doing directly from the department.
Right. I like the idea to mention the factories, because I find that what you have, not just here in St. Kitts and in the region and worldwide, is that you have a lot of women that work in factories, especially garment factories and so on. And of course, that a lot of these factories, some of them, they're multinationals and so on, that have factories all over the world making clothes and shoes and all of that sort of a thing. But basically they're looking for cheap labor, and sometimes women come in for cheap labor.
Exactly.
And sometimes the conditions under which they work are not always the most favorable conditions under which they work. And so that is perhaps an area that has to do with women and employment, and how they are viewed and how they are treated even within the workplace.
Women are the industrial sector. Most women, they are, in terms of the employment, they are located at the lower end of the employment ladder in the sectors such as tourism and the hotel industry and the industrial sector. And that is why we picked that particular area. Not that we are forgetting the other areas where you have women, where you have a small concentration of women, but we picked that area because they are vulnerable, and you have to take in a number of services. Because they are at the low end of the ladder, and it depends on the salary that they make. You cannot afford to move them out and bring them to you and all of that. So we take education into them, and we encourage other sectors that want to do things with them or want to educate them in any way to go in, because the employers, they give us the time and they allow us to come in. So even though they're at work, they still can get the messages that you want to put. And health is very, very important. And most of these people, these women, they have children. So you definitely have to get the information to them so they could know when they go home to look about their children and so on, that they have the correct information. Because you have a lot of misinformation out there, and you want to ensure that they take care of their children properly.
Right. Now, health and women's health. One of the things that has been said in terms of women in the Caribbean, women in St. Kitts and Nevis, is that they are too big. But somehow there is some stereotype that, that is how they are loved. They must be big. And they must be, and we tend to use all kinds of names to refer to the big parts, and so on. And there are songs that are made about it. There was even a song you saying it's women round up or something like that. But at the very same time, we are talking about obesity, and we are talking about the problems that come with obesity.
Yes, in terms of health. I was listening to something this week. I can't recall where it was, and they were talking about women in St. Kitts are the most obese. St. Kittian women are the most obese in the Caribbean. I went into denial because I'm asking myself if that is really true. But then when you start thinking deeply, we may say they look round up and all those kind of things, and they look fat and nice and all that thing, but bigger is not always better because it comes with a price in terms of the health.
Mm-hmm. It does come with a price, and the non-communicable diseases.
Obese only adds to the problem.
It adds to the problem, and I think in terms of, I don't know what are some of the stats in terms of the ratio between women and men when it comes to hypertension and diabetes, but I would want to believe that it is higher among the.
But you see, even though Ms. Charles here have talked about the triple role of women, even with that, we still have to make the effort and find the time to get in a little exercise. Because if you don't do that, it's going to be to the detriment of your own health.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to women and they will say, oh, well, they have to go home and look after the children. They have to work. They're in the private sphere, they're in the public sphere, and they have the community. You have community activities that they still have to do. But as I said before, apart from that, you have to take your health seriously, and you are responsible for your health. So you have to make the time to do the exercise and do whatever you have to do to get off the weight.
Right, so I think that is a critical thing that you will be doing at the factories, Chanel, in terms of talking about health issues, and so on. Now, sometimes too, what happens is that sometimes I feel that women may end up at the lower chain in terms of employment and so on, because we're having more and more women getting pregnant at a very early age. And if you get pregnant at an early age, not that it's not good to have children, but if you're having children at a very early age and you are not prepared in terms of the life skills, you don't have the abilities and the resources to be able to care for those children, to look after those, and you don't have the support, then basically you are relegating yourself to a position in life that is.
St. Kitts has one of the highest female-headed households in the Caribbean, and that has some implication for government, for communities, for families. In terms of the breadwinner situation, because you'll find most of the single women, they are vulnerable. You have to create programs and so on to address the vulnerability. So you now have to go and look at budgeting to address this whole issue of the single-headed household. What can we do? I'm not sure in terms of what we can do to curtail that, because that's a personal responsibility. But in that same mix, you're going to have the issue of housing, which is a very critical thing at this point. Miss Charles will tell you, she run all over the place looking for houses for family of 6, family of 3. Just we have about 6 families waiting for places to go. We don't have any place to put them. So you could see, if we continue with this trend, where we continue to have the increase in single female-headed household, where we are heading.
Mm-hmm. And early pregnancy. And when that happens, of course, it can be an obstacle to people advancing themselves in terms of, especially with things like education. It can happen. You still can do it, but at least.
Well, we work with girls like that, but what I want to say is that in terms of early pregnancy, in terms of the girls, the first responsibility to these girls is in the home. The school also has a responsibility because they do family life education to give them the education that they need. The government has a responsibility to protect these children who are ending up being head of household and who we have a big parenting problem in the federation. You can see the spin-off of poor parenting. And so we got to get a grip on this thing. I don't know how we're going to be doing it. I know that we all have to work together to do that. And everything starts with education and sensitization and so on. But one of the problems that you have, everybody is trying, but the emphasis now is going to have to be put on the home, because it doesn't matter what you do with these children outside the home in terms of educating them and so on. Once they finish there, they're going right back into the same depressed situation. And so this thing keep perpetuating itself.
The society too also have to, lend support and be more supportive. It would be nice if our men, think that, it's important for these girls to get the education. Give them a chance to get the education so that they don't become a burden on the government or they become a burden on you, right? Because if they become a burden on you, how are you going to provide for them? Most of the times they just move on to somebody else. So there's a trend that's actually happening. But it's not only, the government per se, but it's the community and it's the families.
Yes.
And it is also sad to say that these girls, we have a number of girls every year who get pregnant. And the people who get them pregnant are older men. They are not the age group. They are older men. But then it does not translate. I'm not saying to lock up everybody, because lock up may not be the answer. But there are laws which need to be enforced. But sometimes, even though you have the laws to enforce, you still have the issue of dealing with parents. And we live in a society that if we want to turn our head, that's okay. But we know what is happening, why some of those cases don't even reach to court. And therein lies the problem. Because you can prosecute all you want. If the parents, if they are still minors, and if the parent don't agree, there is nothing that you can do. So we have been advocating over the years, the Department of Gender Affairs, to take the parents out of it and make it the state against the perpetrator. Now when you do that, nobody can help you. Even if you want to pay money, it don't make any sense, because you still have to answer for the crime you commit. And I hope that we will get to that point, because these girls who are getting pregnant, they are children themselves. So you have children looking after children. They can't parent properly. And so you have a lot of spin-off and other problems coming from that. Of course, everybody wants to help, yes. But then, even as I said before, even if there are organizations and churches and other people in the society want to help, it all goes back to the parents of these children. You have these children who are giving problems, you call the PTA meetings, the very parents who you want to reach, they're not going to show up. And you cannot get them to counseling. So, and I am hoping that the magistrates begin to put down some stern order in terms of getting some of these people to go to counseling, because even if you tell them to go to counseling, they probably will go once or twice and they just not bother with you, and the problem continue. And then other government ministries have to find money to accommodate them because they need social assistance and all of that. So we really got to do something about some of these things that
but what is the role of the parents in the home to really raise their girls in such a way that they are aware of certain things? For example, the predator, who is a male, older man. Because sometimes women...
The predators right in the house. There,
so also...
The predators are right in the house.
Also, that is also the case. Yes. Sometimes they're in the house and they've been preyed upon.
And the next thing is that if the parent does not know, she can pass on what she don't know. But what she can do, she can ask for help.
But there's a sort of a thinking sometimes among very young girls, teenagers and so on. Some of them may be over 18, some of them not 18 yet, or 16 and so on, but they don't want a little boy.
Yeah, but if
they
you're
want
an adult,
a big man.
But you are an adult, you ought to know better. You ought to know better if you're not.
The
And
adult
that is
ought
why-
to know better, but
right.
how do you change that thinking?
And that is why, you have legislation in place. That is why those adults who insist on taking advantage of these children, and they ought to know better, that is why the law should deal with them.
Sometimes the parents to blame too, because sometimes when you go to these shows, you want to know like, that's the same child that I saw yesterday, that was in the department, dress even worse than how you think you're dressing. Seeing them, I always complain about every January I talk to, the PS and Miss Christopher about, I go into town and I walk in along the side road, Juve morning, and these children, okay, I'm not saying that they can't be there to watch on or whatever, but they actually have the backpack on their back, and the backpack having alcohol. Where did you get the alcohol? Like, who let you out your house at 5 in the morning or 4 in the morning to bring you town? And I think it was not this one gone, the one before. I saw a child literally drunk on the side of the road, and a friend saying, let's go. And she can't get up. She just slumped over trying to even talk. So I was like to myself, I was there saying, man, we need a bus. Pick them up, take them to the police station, let their parents take them from the police station, give the police an excuse as to why the child is in this state. Yes, sometimes the parents are the main cause of these children like that. I'm not saying to keep them in the house 24/7 under lock and key, but monitor them.
In terms of the sexual molestation, the exploitation of children, I was heartened to hear the Prime Minister of Grenada. It was a news item where he was saying enough is enough in his country, especially as it relates to children. And I'm emphasizing girls here because girls and boys really, they're being molested now. They're not picking out, they're just moving through the children. But he was saying that enough is enough, and all agency that has anything to do with children, they have to get up and start working. They can no longer push these cases under the table and so on. They're going to hold them responsible. And I hope the same thing will happen here. When I heard him, I clapped. I said, thank you. I hope people listening. Because children are supposed to be precious. Those are the children are our future. And if we don't care anything about them, you could just exploit them and throw them to the sides and re-victimize them, and then we brush it under the table. What sort of society would we have?
I think in some societies, for example, gender equality. Let's talk about gender equality. It is not just about, it is not a woman's issue only. It is not a woman's issue only. But it's an issue that has to do with business and economies and development. And sometimes what you have happening basically is that in some societies, because of poverty and lack of opportunities, sometimes people soon learn that I can sell my body.
And make money from
I
it.
can make money from selling my body. And so therefore, selling your body becomes, you learn probably that my value, the only value that I have is that of my body. And sometimes we are talking in the context of girls, and that maybe sometimes that is all that they learn, that I am only valuable for my body and nothing else.
And that happened because they have low self-esteem. There is nobody at home to really teach them what is important to what should be important to them and so on. And so they go on the street and they get the information from the wrong people and so on, and they get involved in all sorts of things. But people talk about the advancement of women, and that is good. But there could be no advancement without empowerment. You first have to empower people for them to advance themselves. If you look at what is happening in St. Kitts and Nevis, in the public sector, there is some level of advancement in there, but it's still a far way to go. Then you look at what is happening in the private sector. It is slow, but it is coming. It was just this week that I heard that a woman is now in charge of the chamber. Well, I'm expecting to see some things, and I'll make a little courtesy call to
Giselle
Yes,
Matthews.
Miss Matthew, to sit with her and see what their program is and where they're going, because you have quite a lot of young women now trying to get into business. and they're empowered, but there are obstacles which we have to discuss. How can we remove those obstacles? I did not get a chance to go in the square, but I heard there was quite a lot of young people in there doing business, and we have to
young
encourage,
young women.
Right, we have to encourage this kind of a thing, and this is what I want to know. I'm not going to just because there's a woman in charge of the chamber now to just jump in and say, but there's room for a lot of discussion on how we could get more women, even more women involved in the business. We're not excluding the men, but the men know how to run out there and do the thing and run on the side and get the things done and so on. So we want to strengthen these things, whatever it is, the thing that is coming forward now with regards to women moving in larger numbers into small businesses. That is something we need to encourage, and we need to have that discussion between the chamber and the government and the NGOs to see how we can move that process forward.
Women as entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Business women. You find, but sometimes what you find is that even though you have young women and women in general as entrepreneurs, you find, for example, here in the Federation, it's only certain areas that they're going into business. For example, beauty, cosmetology, salons, the nail business. So it's all about the body works again. It's all about the body works. What about women who probably are involved in...
We want women to be involved in agriculture because food security, it's already a problem and it's going to become a bigger problem.
Mm-hmm.
But then what are the incentives? We have to have good incentives to encourage women to go into agriculture.
And what about technology?
Technology, they are there in small numbers, which needs to be encouraged, and so on. I am not sure if they are being channeling anyway into particular areas, because sometimes I understand in the school, sometimes they are channeling to different areas in the school. But you have to look at the needs of the country and channel women, both women and men, to fill that particular need. There's a need for women in some industry. Look at the nursing. We have a shortage in nursing. Whatever it is are the obstacles there. We got to work to remove, because we have girls coming out of school. They can be nurses too, and so on. So we really have to have you have
mean
to have
boys?
That, boys and girls.
Boys, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you need to have that broader discussion, and this is where I believe the media now to help with these discussion, with the catalyst for some of these discussion, get them started, get people talking, because the ideas are out there, It's not always the politician who has the answer, and you'll be surprised at the ordinary people who could come up with the most creative things and come up with incentive packages that are very good, that draw people to those professions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Talking about that, Chanel, for example, you part of the program on March 6th at the Central Bank, this is Cecil Jacobs Auditorium at ECCB, is to honor or to reward women who have achieved in certain areas. What are some of these areas in which you will be awarding women? What are the areas? What are the categories? And if you could shed something in terms of what you were looking for. You may not be the people, but you may have a committee that looks at because they should really be considered role models. They are role models for other women to achieve, to aspire.
Every year, the areas are different, because we tend to try to give, each woman a chance in the different areas. So it's not the same area every year. But Ms. Christopher was focusing on agriculture. She is saying this year, let's focus. The last year we had agriculture, let's go into agriculture to see in the different areas in agriculture how much women we can pick out. So this year we're back at agriculture again, but it's in agro-processing. Another area that we chose was entertainment. We didn't specify which area in entertainment because there are few women in entertainment. In environment also, that's another one that we chose. We chose human and social development, specifically persons with disability. We also had, I'm just trying to remember off the top of my
sure.
head, but it's at least 9 areas this year. Last year it was 8, but we want to always stick with agriculture, to find these women out there, because we know there are women in these different areas.
But you see, some of those areas are directly tied to the Sustainable Development Goals. And we want to ensure that women are also playing a big part in the sustainability of some of those areas. With regards to agriculture, when people hear agriculture, they just tend to think about farming. But there are so many aspects of agriculture that there you can find a niche. Women can find a niche somewhere in there. A lot of them are going into agro-processing. If that is where they chose to go, then we have to make sure, as I said before, we remove the obstacles so that they could be successful in that particular area. But I also want to get back to the fact that we chose all of these different categories every year. The ministry chose the categories. But when it comes to what we are looking for in giving these women these awards, is not how long you've been doing it, but the impact. The whole thing is about impact. How what you're doing is impacting the community in which you live, the country, your families. So the focus is on the impact. People say, oh, Miss Christopher, I know Mr. Williams and he should have get an award. What have Mr. Williams done? Yes, he's a bright man and he do a lot of things and so on. But how many hours he spend in that community after 4? Or does he just come from his work and go home watch his TV? He's not impacting the community like that. Maybe whatever he's doing inside his house, he probably impacting his family. But you just can't impact just a little few people. You need to impact the community. And so the NGOs are the ones, and individuals. But they don't just come and tell us, well, I find Chanel out there and so I want to get an award. You have to bring a profile because I have to get it checked out. You can't tell me, oh, Mr. Williams is in the community 5 days a week, and then when I go in the community to check, nobody know who name so. Nobody seen Mr. Williams. But yet still you're telling me to give them an award. So we don't choose the award. We allow the NGOs to choose the award, and we back check to see if what they're giving us is true. And then it goes, once they send the nomination, it goes to a judging panel. So the Department of Gender don't choose people, we don't pick people. It goes to a judging panel, and they pick the ones, and that is how they get that award.
This year we chose law, but yes, we always, look at law, but this year specifically, we chose women in the correctional system. That's a set of women that we never really awarded before, so we thought that it was very important this year, to get someone from that sector, because sometimes people tend to look at professions in terms of rank, and they may think that these women are in the lower rank, in the professional arena. But we try to look at, everybody on an equal scale. It doesn't matter what type of work people are doing. We also picked this category this year, and it was in solid waste management also. That's another area that people tend to, look down on, but, who's going to clean our mess if we don't clean it, right? So each woman, have to be recognized, at some point. So we don't tend to always go into health, because we choose health and we choose mental health, but we tend to look at the other areas that people don't normally recognize.
You have a lot of unsung heroes out there, and people hardly see them because they're behind the scenes. But we see the work that they do, and I believe the work that they do is important, and so they must be recognized for the work that they do. As Chanel mentioned, we can't live without the people who pick up the garbage for us, right, because everybody's going to get sick. So they, in this whole chain of human endeavor, everybody play an important part, and as such you need to recognize the people when they're brought to the attention.
Right. Right. Even women in the disaster management also, we tend to close our eyes and we're thinking, when there's a hurricane, is men. We look at the men, but the women are there too. The women are there, and when you look at the NEMA or you look at NHC, look to see who is at the top. with the men. Most of it might be maybe just one, but you might have a director just who is below the PS, might be a man, right? But they are there. They are probably in small numbers, but they are there.
Women are there.
They are there.
Yes, they're there.
They're there. Yeah.
Women have, sometime in my world, women have always worked alongside men, but it's just that they didn't get the recognition.
I think women
But
is who
because
give
they
the
are
man the push.
empowering themselves and coming out now, especially from the private sphere and entering into the public sphere, they get some more visibility.
No, I think it's we who really give them the push, right, and the drive to really do what they want to do. Because I can attest to it, but for another time we can talk about that. Right?
You can attest. You have your own. You have your own personal story.
Right. But women are mostly the forefront. Right?
Well, they said women are always, if you see a successful man over there,
Right.
you ain't got to look too far. The women are close somewhere behind. So all the success you're seeing out there, just look beneath that success and you're going to see who you find under there.
But you are here not to speak about a woman necessarily being behind a man.
No, but
But
I'm
you-
telling you the importance of women.
Yes.
Yes.
And sometimes we overlook those things. We just look at what is before us. We got to sometimes look what is beneath what is before us.
Because there are a number of women in the society who would have become successful through their hard work,
Yes.
through their education, through their self-esteem, which you mentioned before, and who just would not be trampled upon.
And again, it takes me back to the empowerment of women. Because you see, women bring a different perspective to any type of discussion. And this is going to lead me into this political decision making. This country committed itself to 30% of women in the parliament. We are 20 at this point in time. Actually, there are women in the community who wants to come forward and run for political office because we want to go into a place where our voice is heard. It is heard in some quarters, but we need it at the highest level. And so we have to prepare the women for these. So we are now at 20%. It is slow, but it is coming. But I want to say to the women out there, you don't, again, to even this political decision, you can lead in different areas in political decision. Sometimes you don't have to be in the house, but you could be even on the outside and have such a powerful influence that you could direct anything from anywhere. And we can't sell ourselves short, because behind all of those politicians are the women, 60%, 50, I think it's 51% of the population are women. So women have quite a lot of power. It's just that we are not recognizing our power.
Do you think, Mrs. Christopher, that sometimes women are the ones who fail to empower other women? And that sometimes what you have is that you have a woman fight, in the sense that women are pulling down women. When they see other women trying to go high, they pull them down and they say all kind of things. And sometimes you hear certain things, boy, me want a woman boss, And these women and so on, they're full of confusion. And you hear all kinds of things, that I would prefer to work with a man rather than work with a woman as my boss. So there are stereotypes.
Yes.
And what are we doing in terms of challenging certain stereotypes when it comes to women? Because sometimes the stereotypes work against the advancement and empowerment of women. And sometimes women themselves are not encouraging and empowering other women. They are pulling them down.
Well, you see.
Would you agree with me, Chanel?
Yes,
You have, to,
definitely.
you have to start with how you empower your own self and how confident you are about yourself, because you have to start with your own self-empowerment. I don't want to say anything, but I think Chanel could explain to you. I have, how many women, Chanel? 5? 5 women in my department, and 1 male. And I'm trying to correct that, because that is not no gender balance. We need more males in there. So I have to
Dion
correct
is the
gender
lone
balance.
male there
Yes,
still.
Dion is the lone male there. And
I'll see if one of my staff members here
I set out
can volunteer? Maybe
I
Castan.
deliberately set out to empower those women and to give them the knowledge and exposure that they need to do their job. And as women bosses, that's what we should seek to do. Some people have the idea that, oh, if I help Chanel, Chanel is going to take over my job. Take over what job? If you are confident in yourself, by the time Chanel get to the point where you're at, you're already a little higher than that. And when you're going up, you must try to pull them up. Every one of them, tomorrow, you're going to see them in action. And I ain't had a thing to do with it. I could be very nice to them, but then when it comes to the work, then I don't play. There's an invisible line there that you don't cross.
Mm-hmm.
You come here to work, you have to work. And you have to produce results. So tomorrow, if you're there, you're going to see me sitting and you're going to wonder why Miss Christopher is not up there doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do anything because they are the ones who are going to carry this thing when I'm not there.
Right.
And if I move, you see a lot of people in the cemetery, they say they'll be smiling, but they got with all the information in their head because they don't want to teach people. And that is a very bad thing. And you should always have that continuity in any ministry, in any department, that when somebody leave, somebody automatically carry on. So empowerment is very, very important. And if you see people in a department or ministry not being empowered, they could do something can be done about it. You talk to somebody, oh, I can't do this, and I can't do this because this ain't show me and that ain't show me. Well, if he's in charge of them, he got to go and teach them what to do, because you see, the thing is, if tomorrow she decides, well, I had enough for here and I'm leaving, you have that void to fill. And to her own detriment, if there's a position that is open and you don't want to show anybody, well, you stay there until you can teach somebody. So it is important to empower people. We got to stop this nonsense about when you empower people, they're going to take away your job. That is foolishness.
Yeah, that speaks to insecurity.
Yes.
But there are also some people who put up resistance in terms of wanting to learn.
Yes.
Exactly.
And so therefore they are doing themselves a disservice, really.
Well, I don't waste time on people who don't want to learn because I have to move on to teach other people.
Mm-hmm.
If you're there, I'm giving you everything that I have. You don't want to learn, I can't make you learn. I move on to the next person.
And so you basically have to
And
look at
then you see when people there,
attitudes
when
and-
people have that kind of attitude and they stay in a department, they say, oh, nobody's showing me nothing. Me ain't getting what? Me ain't getting appointed. Me ain't doing this. Anybody, you can't appoint. But I would never appoint and know that they should not be moving on to that position because you're setting them up to fail.
Yeah. So those stereotypes and those biases and perceptions and so on keep women back that the society has. So it means that we have some work to do in terms of the society and how we really change those things. What are some of the ways in which the gender department, because it says, we say I am generation equality, realizing women's rights. Women's rights. What are women's rights? Of course, they're human rights.
Mm-hmm. So those are
But-
inalienable rights that you can't take away. But in terms of your right, we look to government for the policies and legislation and so on to help us to enforce those rights and to support those rights, the women's rights.
Mm-hmm.
And we have legislation, we have policies that address discrimination and some of those sorts of things. But sometimes you could have all the laws in the book. If they're not being enforced, then you have nothing.
Right.
And sometimes that is the problem.
I have sometimes seen, and sometimes I look at it and I wonder. Two women, young women in the street, ripping off one another's clothes, say they're fighting over a man, and the man is there laughing after them. What is that all about? How isn't that sort of a dehumanizing to the women who are involved?
And the ones who laughing and
the
taping.
laughing and taping and doing all of that sort of a thing. What's that?
But it goes back to the self-esteem, poor self-esteem. Because if you, depends on your value system, and your self-esteem, you shouldn't even engage in that. You shouldn't even begin to engage in that. Because one, what are you getting from behaving like that? You're not getting anything out of it. What you're doing is just, I don't even know what word to use. When a woman tear off another one clothes in the street for foolishness.
Making a point that's not even there.
Making a point that is not even there. What do you mean by that, Chanel?
And what are they trying to prove? That I have him, and guess what? He's saying, I don't want none of them. Or I have all of them. So how is that a point?
Listen, when the fight is over, nobody wins, And you have not changed one thing. So you move on for your next fight.
Yeah,
which is real foolishness.
It's a cockfight.
Yeah. And then
and this is what I'm saying. When you go in front of the magistrate with those type of things, they should send you to counseling, automatically send you, learn something then. You got to learn something from this thing. You go to fight, you end up here. It has not improved your life, you have not learned anything. The fight is over and nobody wins.
Mm-hmm.
They're proving that. And it's like a trend for the young people to follow also. Because, they're in high school and they're doing the same thing. They're fighting. And fighting over what, really? It had 1 year we wanted to do a challenge, an apology challenge, but apparently we didn't, get it off. But we wanted to put it on our Facebook page. We wanted to start it by asking Cynthia to apologize to a next woman who she probably had a beef with.
Right.
She had agreed and everything that she would start it, and to see the trend that would follow. But unfortunately, we didn't go through with it because we were seeing some negativity might happen, and we just don't want anything to spur out of control. But I would have liked to done it to see what would have been the responses and who would apologize to who. But you would have had to call the person's name that you had a beef with. It was a beef apology challenge.
Okay.
Yeah. So and I think that's good awareness too, to bring to the public. Can you ask what are we doing to make the change? And that's awareness, that's media awareness. Miss Christopher may not be up to it to do it because she's saying, I don't know WhatsApp, I don't know what is WhatsApp, so I don't think that she would have been able to start the challenge as the director.
Yeah, one of the reasons I raised that thing too is the violence. Sometimes we speak about men being violent towards women, and that is a problem in our society. It is a matter of how people exercise power relations.
That is what it's all about.
Yeah, and it's a matter of, I have to discipline you. You must be disciplined. And that sort of a thing, which is a sort of a masculinity, toxic kind of a thing, that's how people think. And but on the other hand, when you have women who are being violent to other women over a man, or women who are being violent to other women over a woman. Because sometimes you not only have these relationships, men and women, sometimes you have gay relationships where there's a lot of violence that takes place. The very same sort of thing takes place.
You see, this is why I like to say, children live what they learn. And children don't get up tomorrow and become violent. They are in a place or a system that there's just a lot of violence. It starts in the home. And I keep going back, all of the little things when you say the two siblings start arguing and everything. And the parents just walk by and ignore it and so on. And it gets worse and worse and worse. Now, and that is because what they see happening in their homes. They see some form of violence in there. Now they take that behavior, and the violence in the home is all about power relations. Who is in charge here and who is the boss and all of that. They take that behavior into the schools. And if there is no intervention, they take it into the workplace. And they take it into their personal lives. And the end result is what we see around here. This constant fighting between men and women. We don't know how to sit and talk about a problem. Somebody don't want to talk. And you go to court and you waste the magistrate time, and you waste everybody time. Of course, the lawyers are glad because they get pay, and I glad for them too. They get the pay. But you see where you end up. If you look at where it came from without an intervention all the way, and it ended up in the court. And it spills off into the community, and we have what we have. But it didn't start overnight, and they're not born violent. They're taught to be violent.
The equality problem really goes back to power, you know.
It goes back to power relation, and it goes right back to the
power.
home.
It's power.
Right back to the home.
It's who has the most power. That's what it goes back to.
And all that feeds into our cultural belief, our cultural norms, because men were taught that they're in charge and so on. But with the generation, with the new generation, the roles are changing. You have 61% of female-headed household. There's no man in there. So the only power wielding in there is the woman. And then you introduce a man into that home who wants to know all of a sudden become in charge. You're going to have none but problems there. Because they're accustomed to live a certain way all their lives.
We are going to go to the phone lines. A very interesting discussion. These discussions are always very interesting. The numbers to call, the local number is 465-2555. That's the local number. And the overseas number is 1718-577-2916. We await your calls. Right. So, women's rights and how those rights are materialized in St. Kitts and Nevis. How are they materialized, Miss Christopher, in terms of women's rights? Because we can talk all we want.
In terms of women's rights, you ought to look at how this is being addressed. At the level of the UN, you have conventions, you have treaties, you have all sorts of mechanisms there that addresses the rights of women. And because we are part of an international community, it comes down to the regional mechanism, which feeds into our national mechanism.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Lesroy.
Good afternoon.
And your team of ladies.
Yes.
Wonderful program as usual. I have a question for the ladies. Now, there are a lot of women being battered and abused in St. Kitts that I know of. Well, I know two sets of couples directly. I could point and say, yes, it happened this morning. Now, when those ladies there go and make a complaint to the police, do the gender affairs get that information from the police so they can go and investigate what is going on and then take measures? Because these kind of threats is like telling the woman them, if this ain't do, I'm going to put you in the cemetery, I'm going to put you in this, when this happen, or that and all kind of thing. And they even showing the woman the weapon. Look at what happened there a year before. Over keys with them two women. It is said that he used to threaten one of them, the killer used to threaten one of them. And it happened so well then, he put his threat into action, and the other one went to the rescue. And then he put the action on the one-to-one. Two of them gone to the cemetery. And that same thing that happened in Nevis 3-4 years ago. This man wanted to kill his girlfriend, and the girlfriend friend heard him. And he tell the girlfriend friend, if she say anything, he can kill she. But he didn't get to kill the girlfriend friend. He killed his girlfriend. So my question is what I asked, if you are getting information from the police to go and deal with this situation. Because it must be stopped. Somebody had to hold the bull by the hand and the tail and kill it. So thank you, ladies, for listening. Let's go. Have a good day.
You too.
Your walk.
Okay.
With regards to what the question from culture, if gender affairs is aware of these things that are happening, the Department of Gender Affairs is more or less an advocacy and referral department. We raise awareness of gender issues. Our department, we have walk-ins, we have call-ins. Sometimes people have a problem and they just walk in. There are certain things in place the government has put in place. You have legislation, you have protocols, you have the Special Victims Unit, you also have the Legal Aid Clinic, and you have social services. Now, when somebody walks off the street and coming to make a complaint, and there are many entry points, sometimes your situation may start at the hospital, or you may go direct to the police. But if you show up at the Department of Gender Affairs, the very first thing we do is to do an intake, so we get all of the information. Now, it depends on what you show up there with. If you come because you were physically abused, that's a thing for the police, because that person had broken the law, because there's a law against that. So anybody that violates the law, it's a criminal offense. Domestic violence is a criminal offense. And I don't think people paying attention to this thing, because you can be fined and confined to prison for domestic violence. I think the penalty was $5,000. In some instances, it's $5,000 and a couple of months in jail. So you can do that.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Celia, and the other lady, I don't remember her name.
Yes.
Chanel Charles.
Yeah.
Good
Miss
afternoon.
Charles. Celia,
Yes.
you may not recognize my voice, but I just want to say a million thanks
Uh-huh.
for the information.
Uh-huh.
Remember, I had a teenage daughter, and you all was very supportive with knowledge and everything. So I just want to say a million thanks to you all.
That is all we want to hear. Thank you. Because it means so much to us. It means that we are reaching some people and they're grateful for it, and we thank them, although it's our job. So as I was saying, I continue to say, when the complaint comes in, we do the intake. And we send, if it's a criminal offense, because it's physical abuse, that case is referred to the Special Victims Unit, because it's a criminal offense. And we make sure we give a copy to the victim, because in the event that particular document get lost for some reason, they can always come back. If they have to go to court, they can always come back to us to get a copy of their thing. Once we give it to them, they deal with what they have to deal with, and we wait for feedback from them. If we don't get any feedback, we call.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, let's ride.
Good afternoon.
A while ago, I hear the lady say that when women got the house and they take care of the man with them, the man want to empower the woman. I wanted to know if that ain't more to man and women do to woman. Is that the vibe?
Could you repeat that, please?
I wanted to know if the lady said before that when a woman taking a man, the man want to come and empower the woman, the holy house. I wanted to know. She said it's because of the man as custom live. So I wanted to know when a man taking a woman, if not the woman to do.
It works both ways, because you have women who going into a house to live with a man and they want to take over the man thing too. So it works both ways. But there are laws there to protect both women and men, because if you are a victim, there are places that you can go to get redress for whatever is happening there.
Mr. Leswai, the first caller spoke about investigations. Gender Affairs don't do investigations. And yes, Gender Affairs do communicate with the Special Victims Unit, and we would get the cases via email every morning. This case happened. And then they would call and say, okay, we have a case, see where you can refer the case, whether counseling, Special Victims Unit, and not Special Victims Unit, but legal aid or social assistance, wherever they think that they need to be directed. But definitely we don't do investigations. If they come to the department, we will do what we have to do, which is the intake. If somebody call and report a case, then we can call or get to know who the person is and if they need help. But in terms of investigating, going into communities and searching, that's the police work.
So you don't do criminal investigations?
No, we don't.
No.
But there are certain
do
other
home
type of
visit.
investigations you can
Yeah.
do, but not criminal.
Right.
For example, if somebody comes to the department and they're seeking social assistance, we have to do a home visit,
Right.
because we have to know what is the situation, the living conditions and all of that. So that we can do. But when it comes to criminal investigations, we are not trained to do that. We are not police, and I never believe that you should touch anything that you are not trained to do. So off they go, whatever they're looking for. If they say they want counseling, you go off to
Yeah.
counseling. If you say you want pastoral counseling, because some people will say, well, I want to find a good pastor or whatever it is, we refer you to somebody for pastoral counseling. If you want to go to the police, we can't tell you what to do. So you can't come and say, well, Miss Christopher, what should I do? I cannot tell you that. You have to decide what it is you want. So if you want to go to the police to pursue your case. But then there's a challenge, because a lot of times you have some women who go to the special victims unit with a case, and they put them through all of these things where they do all of the preparation and administrative work. And then when the case is supposed to call, they're not going. Or they call back the next day and say, well, I want to withdraw my order,
Yes.
the order that I put in. So you do also have that challenge. And then next week, they're back there. But as I said to the staff, if they come 100 times, you have to deal with them, because the one time when you're in deal with them could be the one time when they're really in trouble.
Or they don't want to sign the police statement.
And I must also say there's a difference between a report and a statement. When you're doing a report, you're just giving them the information. But when it comes to a statement, you have to sign the statement. And if you sign the statement, you're giving them permission to proceed with your case. So you can't say, well, I went to the station. I went to the station and tell them. That is not enough. You have to decide if you want to go to court, and in doing that, you must make a statement. You must give them a signed statement.
Do we have any facilities for battered women and for women who are involved probably on drugs or anything like that? Because sometimes, because of various life situations and circumstances, you can have women who get hooked on drugs, alcoholics, and so on. And that makes them even more vulnerable in our society.
That has been a problem for the department over the years, the issue of shelters. In the region, there are a couple of countries that have shelters, because governments know that it's their responsibility to provide shelter across the region, for these people. But you encourage, the private sector could be encouraged to do centers. In the past, when there was no one in the private sector who come forward to do anything with regards to shelter, we used to work with the churches. They will help us, they will put up the people and so on for us. For just a short while, get the life together, cool off and everything and so. But we do not have any government-owned shelters. That is something that we have been working on, and we will continue to work on. But there is a private shelter that is supposed to be coming up, owned by Etsu Bracho. And I don't want to say much about that, because I would prefer Etsu come here and speak about for shelter. But on the other side of the island, there's also Mr. Springy Church. But in that shelter, you can only spend 4 days, and it's only for a cool-off period. So you don't move in with your suitcase and say you move to your new home. That ain't going to happen. You're only going there for a few days. And of course, one of the issues that, and I always encourage women, if you are comfortable where you are, please do not move in with your boyfriend or your partner. If you have a house and you're comfortable, visiting unions, people still have visiting unions. You visit, you go home, and you all don't get in each other way. Because when they move in and the relationship turns sour, now they come to the Department of Gender Affairs. We don't do houses in the Department of Gender Affairs. We are not responsible for housing. But if we send them over to NHC or to the police, they're going to send them right back to us. And what am I supposed to do? It was only yesterday. We got a call for a young lady, says she don't have any place to stay. I can't take her home with me. Chanel can't take her home with her. But she has to sleep somewhere. So the first thing we do is call on the churches to help. But we got to get something structured, something properly established in the country where these people can go. So please, out there, Gender Affairs do not have houses. We try to help to see if we know anybody who has a house. But we do not have houses, so come into us for a house. We can't help you with a house.
Yeah, so some days ago, about a month ago, a lady stopped me on the street, in Church Street. And she said, "Sir, I want to thank you for that program that you did." I am a victim of abuse. And she said, that program that you did helped me. I had to end up seeing the psychologist. Because abuse is not just physical, you know.
No.
You affect the person psychologically, emotionally.
But you have all types of abuse, you know. You also have financial abuse on both sides.
But they all intertwine.
Both sides. Because you have this issue where one partner, whoever making the most money, I don't know how it works, but they have this issue of withholding money. So if you have children in that house and you are going to withhold money, what do you expect the children to eat? You work all week, you get your pay, but you decide to put down that is one way of getting to her. We have an issue and this is how I'm going to solve it. By not putting down any money, and so the whole household is affected, including the children. So
But sometimes in these
psychological abuse
relationships is, you know, when you end up trusting too much and then they take all your money and then leave you dry.
Well, one of the things we try to do at the Department of Gender Affairs, when somebody comes to the department who has the issue of domestic violence, we try to help them to find a place to stay, see if anybody. But when you ask about family, me and my mother don't talk, I don't have nothing to do with she. Me and my family, them don't get on. What about your friends? Oh, I don't have no friends, they ain't got a room. So where you expect me to put you? I don't have a place to put you. And you have that situation. I mean, sometimes I sit there and I wonder, because some of these people at shop, they have children. And you're worrying about the children, because if she doesn't have a place to sleep, what is going to happen to those children? And then if she gets a place to sleep, her children may be molested. So it's a whole chain of events happen when when you see a woman is displaced.
Mm-hmm.
And one lady said to me, "But Miss Christopher, how come y'all ain't got a house? Well, now your minister them responsible for housing." I said, "Well, you are free to go and speak with the minister. He have a constituency office, so you need to go and sit and speak with him. And when you need a house, you go to NHC and you apply for the house. But this gender affairs here don't have any house. I can't help you with a house."
And because we have more, as you correctly said, more single
Parent-families.
parent-headed homes and that sort of a thing, our housing policy might reflect that, where more women are getting homes than men.
That is true. That may be true in a sense.
You
But then
know?
you also had most of the people, the victims who end up coming to us as seeking social assistance, they are females.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to do something about that.
Right. Issues. So, we are called to accelerate gender equality. It's not an easy task,
No.
but it can be done.
Well, this gender equality has been something from generations, and it is going to continue, because you never have perfect equality. But we can work at it. Governments can do their part by enacting the proper legislation and policies, and so to help in the structural areas and so on. And of course, the agencies, NGOs can do their part, and the responsibility also lies with the individual. So if everybody do their part, we're not going to get it completely eradicated, inequality, but we could make some inroads into getting a number of things on equal footing.
Yeah. And sometimes really, you know, sometimes a lot of these inequalities and abuse of rights are really perpetrated by the church. And it is really sad to say, because sometimes the church should be in the forefront of, you know, protecting people's human rights and all of that sort of a thing, are the very same people and their pastors who are on the pulpit bashing people and that sort of a thing, which just does not help.
Well, here's where the ministry of ecclesiastic comes in. Because if you have all these churches reporting to that ministry, you must be able to carve out some areas in there where they can help with the situation of domestic violence or violence, among among men and women.
Or their understanding of theology is that the
It's not
male is far superior to the female. I don't know where they get all of these kinds of things from. It's amazing.
It brings me back to a situation. A couple of years ago, I went to Guyana to do a domestic violence workshop for PAHO. And in that workshop were just pastors and counselors. And when the discussion began, some of them was totally ignorant to what is happening in terms of domestic violence. I went so far as to ask them to get victims so that you can hear their story. Because it's okay for you to tell me to go back to your house and remember what the Lord said and God said you must stay there and all of that and so forth. That lady came to that place where we had the domestic violence workshop. She was happy to come and tell her story. And you see, when people enter a room, you must pay attention to the body language. When she came in, she was happy, but then all of a sudden, the smile went from her face and the body language was different. And there was something in that room that triggered that. And later on, she came and she told her story still. And when we took her to the counselor to find out if she was okay and so, she said no, there was a pastor in that room who almost made me get killed. And I don't say this because I want to bash any pastor, but we got to be so careful. But what happened is that he didn't know how to deal with the situation. And instead of referring, sometimes pastors like to hold things to the chest and so on instead of going and getting help for the people. Mm-hmm. Instead of referring, he sent her back to her husband. And she said to us, the most licks she ever get in her life till she had to go in a fishing boat and go to Venezuela that night. So I'm saying that to say, pastors know they have got to get with it. They've got to educate themselves about this domestic violence.
And not only domestic violence, a lot of other things.
Right, domestic violence, we speak about that in particular. But so I am hoping that we could put together a workshop because so many things have changed over the years. There are legislation now, and you can know that somebody is going to kill somebody and keep it to yourself in the name of God. You can't do that. And sometimes they don't want to report these things. Mm-hmm. So we got to try and educate the pastors as to what is happening because domestic violence is no longer a silent issue. It's something that it's out there. From the time you put legislation, it become a public issue. So I just hope
you have to report.
Yeah. Because there are so many cases that go unreported.
That is correct. Any form of abuse has to be reported.
Yep.
Is there anything else you want to say? Time is up.
Well, we are having the International Awards, International Women's Day Awards ceremony. As Shinel said, at Central Bank on Friday evening, we will be awarding the 9 deserving women for their contribution.
In 9 categories.
Yes, in 9 different categories. We know the general public normally supports us, so we look forward to that support. Mm-hmm. And on that day, on that note, I want to wish all the women out there and their partners Happy International Women's Day.
And invite them to church on Sunday.
Yes. Oh yes, and we want you to come to church on Sunday and bring him with you. Mm-hmm. Bring your pastor, we bring your boyfriend or your partner with you. We want to see the family.
Right.
We invite people to go to our website.
Facebook page.
Our Facebook page. There are lots of information there sometimes. Mm-hmm. And if you need help and you don't know what to do, and you go to that page, or you could ask somebody or send us a message. We'll be happy to help.
Okay, what's the Facebook page? What's the...
St. Kitts Department of Gender Affairs.
Gender Affairs, okay.
Yes.
Chanel?
Well, Happy International Women's Day when it comes, and I hope that women, more value themselves now, seeing that they have a day. They are being recognized, and they're not hidden behind the scene anymore. So, Happy International Women's Day when it comes.
I wanted to mention, this is off the topic, but something happened today at Government House. And this has never happened in the Federation. Where you can now go to the website www.lawcommission www.lawcommission.gov.kn, and you can find all the laws of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Well, this
is historic. It has never happened before, and we really have to give some kudos to all those who went into making this possible. Our Attorney General, the Honorable Vincent Byron, and his team, the Ministry of Legal and Justice and Legal Affairs, and so on. This is something that, really needs to be praised.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking for the legislation on domestic violence, you have just heard the website where you can go and you can get all of the information you need and know how to address whatever issue you're going to within that particular situation.
Right. Thank you. Always a pleasure to have you on this program, Chanel and Mrs. Christopher. Thank you so much for coming and sharing. And a topic that we share over and over again, and one that is of significance. So thank you very much for tuning in to today's Working for You, and happy International Women's Day to all the women, not only in St. Kitts and Nevis, but throughout the world, wherever you are listening. Thank you very much for listening to today's program, and for all of you who called in, gave your comments or asked your questions. We continue to appreciate you from week to week. Next week, we will be back with another edition of Working for You. Until then, I am Lesroy Williams.
Working for You. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Lesroy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for You is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for You.